order. Ms. Humphries, can you please take the roll?
President Gresham, Vice President Thompson.
Present.
Member Holcomb.
Here.
Member Kazi.
Here.
Member Spear.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Is there anyone who would like to move the adoption of the agenda?
Second.
Motion made by Ms. Kazi, seconded by Mr. Holcomb. Please vote. Okay, motion passes. Now the Pledge of Allegiance. Ms. Kelly, would you be willing to lead us in the pledge? I don't believe there's any need for an executive session. Hearing none. Items on number 3, communications and announcement. Dr. Guerin.
Vice President Thompson, I'm so pleased to introduce Miss Heidi Kelly, new director for the Center of the Arts. You approved her at the last board meeting, and I'd like to turn it over to Miss Garvey to introduce her formally.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam President. Madam Vice President, sorry about that. Members of the board, Dr. Guerin and Cabinet. I am just really honored and happy tonight to be able to introduce Heidi Kelly, who is the new director for the Madison Center for the Arts. And we went through quite a process of interviewing, and she rose to the top. Just to give you a little bit of background, although she can feel free, we'll have a few words too. She has about 20 years working with theaters and performing arts types organizations. She was one of just a few people recruited to actually open the McKnight Performing Center for Arts on the Oklahoma State University campus. So her background is also in not only theater, but really advertising, revenue. So we're really, really excited to have her join our team. And Ms. Kelly, if you'd like to come up, if you have anything that you'd like to say.
Thank you so much. Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much. I'm just really wanted to let everybody know how excited I am about this opportunity. I've already met with the team, and we're already hitting the road running. We're very excited about the opportunities and the possibilities of this next chapter. So thank you very much.
Welcome. Thank you. Item 3.2, Superintendent's Report. Dr. Guerin.
Just a thank you to our staff, students, parents, and community for really a first great 10 days of school. Just such a smooth opening with a lot of smiles, happy faces, just a few tears. Through everyone's hard work, dedication, patience with transportation and drop-off and pickup, which went very well, and a little bit of sprinkling with the Madison community spirit. We had a really extraordinary opening to the 24-25 school year, and I can't believe it's already the 24-25 school year. At our welcome back breakfast, I spoke about at Madison, education springs from the heart, and that really is the theme this year, that if our students know that we care for them, that we believe in their potential, then they will achieve. And that also goes for every single Madison employee. They need to feel cared for and that we believe in them and we give them the tools that they need to be happy to go to work every day. So just as a reminder of the theme, I've left a pin for each of you that has the Madison, there's a red heart, and it talks about why it's so important to not only educate the kids, but to care for them as well. And if you put them on your lanyard when you go to school, that might help you remember to wear your lanyard, because we're going to have you guys really get official and wear your lanyards to school. We are still hiring, and Dr. Lomeli has organized a job fair already tomorrow to hire those MAC workers, bus drivers, and paraprofessionals. I mean, we can hire anyone, but we're really focused on those openings, and that is tomorrow from 3 to 6 o'clock in this governing board room. And we do not quite have our student enrollment update yet. We're still counting the numbers, but the 10-day numbers are looking very, very solid. So we are definitely up students and had just surprisingly less drop off than you would in regards to who enrolls and who attends school. So I think that's all I had today. So thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to governing board member reports. Mr. Holcomb.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm glad to get the pin, and that I was particularly moved by the welcome back celebration and the theme that you chose for that. So I think it's going to be something good to remember throughout the year as we're going through. I know it will be for me, and also had a very good first parent-teacher organization meeting, associations meeting. Each one has a slightly different name, but it was actually 2 hours, and people dedicated 2 hours to getting off to a good start for those organizations. And so not only is it looking good for the start of the schools, for the start of the school year, but I think the parent organizations and communities are going to be very strong this year too. And I very much want to welcome you to joining the Madison. I'm really looking forward to your leadership and taking it even to the next level. We've been really developing it over the years, and I think I'm very excited. I think we're at a point where we can really have the Madison take off. I mean, it's got a very solid foundation now. No pressure, but it's all on you. Anyway, well, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Holcomb. Ms. Spear?
My presentation, my report will be very short. Welcome, Ms. Kelly. Thank you for joining us. I'm excited to see what you can do with the Madison, and I'm just excited that you're here. So thank you. That's all I have.
Ms. Kazi?
Thank you. I want to echo my colleagues' welcome. We're thrilled to have you. Also, just wanted to say how excited I am about the enrollment report we saw in Friday update. And I think it's not just, it's just, I think it's just when you do good work and people talk about the work, you get results like this. And so and obviously I think the results from our parent survey that Jason Piankoski will be sharing with us later tonight will also, show some insight as to why people continue to choose medicine and continue to share why this is a great place to bring your kids. So thank you to everyone. It's really exciting news.
Thank you. I have a brief report. Welcome, Ms. Kelly. We're glad to have you. We're glad to have you on board. I echo all of my colleagues' comments. I'm also very excited to see the enrollment numbers. They're very strong, and I know we'll have a fuller report on that. But it's so wonderful to see the community choosing Madison, and not just students who live in the Madison district, but others who come from near and far to partake of our programs and services. I want to thank the PTO leaders and the administrators who came to the breakfast and committed 2 hours to getting to know each other just yesterday. We've got some schools that have had their curriculum nights already, others that are coming up, and we've had sports tryouts on campuses. So I want to thank all the folks who are participating in those, and our parents who are coming and helping their students. We had MAP testing that's going on in our schools, so we can set the baseline for the school year. And then finally, I just want to give a shout out to communications. As I was scrolling through Facebook, I saw a little video that communications did highlighting one of our employees, one of the bus drivers, talking about their day, why they liked the school, why they came here. And it was just really wonderful, not only to see what joy that person has in their job and in working with our students, but also connecting with our community. So I want to give a shout out to our communications team for that work. And that's all I have. Item number 4, the consent agenda. Does anyone have any items they would like removed from the consent agenda? If not, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Spear, seconded by Mr. Holcomb. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Calls to the public. Ms. Humphrey, are there any calls to the public?
We have no calls to public.
No calls to the public. Next, information items. Dr. Guerin, parent survey results.
Vice President Thompson, members of the board, cabinet, and guests, I'm very excited to introduce Assistant Superintendent Barb Marshall to go over the parent survey results. And I don't want to steal any of the thunder from the presentation, but this information that we gathered is really thoughtfully used right away. It's a direct link into the action taken by the school integrated action plans for the school. So not only, sometimes people gather data and just look through it, we really work hard to move forward based on this feedback. So I'm very excited to turn it over to Barb Marshall.
Thank you, Vice President Thompson, members of the board, and members of cabinet. You heard Member Kazi earlier refer to the parent survey, and then Dr. Guerin. It is something that is used as a data set when we look at those learning environments that we create for our students toward that mission of fostering success through those dynamic, engaging, and relevant learning experiences. So our principals have had the chance to go through it because they used it to help identify the primary needs for their school integrated action plans. And with 5 new principals from last year, we were eagerly awaiting the results to see the impact that would have. And so tonight, Jason Piankowski, our Director for Research and Evaluation, will share those results from the 23-24 survey.
Members of the board, Dr. Guerin, members of cabinet, no thanks. Thank you for the opportunity to present tonight. Today I'll be giving you a broad overview of some results from our family survey so that we can have a better understanding of some of the trends that are occurring. On this first slide, I have some general considerations as far as how many people have engaged in the survey, when those surveys were released, to give you some context on those items that we've done over the past few years. If you look on the far right side, 2021, 2022, BOI, that is beginning of the year. That is just after we came out of all our different educational experiences with restrictions, and we did this family survey at the beginning of that year, and then we did also continue that survey at the end of that year, and then since have gone back to our common practice of doing EOI end of year survey. So in 2021, 2022, spring of 23 and 24, we've continued with that consistency over that end of the year. Typically, we release that survey towards the end of the year. We had some discussions with our leadership team this past year in 2023-24 about itching it a little bit more forward into April, and we may be able to capture a few more days this year. One of our competing interests is our state assessment season that is occurring at that time, and managing some of those 2 big events as far as communication and prioritization isn't something that we wanted to cloud some of those communication tools with. So we try and make sure that we, when we do launch the parent survey, that it's usually at the end of those big major engagements for the school, so that they have time to organize various different parent organizations and communications and ramp up people to get them super psyched up for other things than state assessment, which is really fun. There we go. And so we'll see that overall we had 1,878 people initially engage in our parent survey. That filter that I referenced there, English version filter, that's after people maybe engage with that survey and then disengage at some point, stopped answering questions. Mostly that we cut that filter off after some of the demographic ones, what grade level, what school are you in, some of those basic ones. And so we removed those from our analysis, so we don't have some various different concerns about data pieces. So we had the initial launch this past year on April 24th, and then we closed it on May 30th. We took those results, did a brief analysis to present to the schools, and then we shipped off a lot of information to the schools in the very next few days for them to start analyzing that information during their school integrated action plan team meetings, which happened in May and in the beginning of June. One of the questions that we delve into quickly, we have this main question that we've been asking in Madison for since before I came to Madison, actually. We do have some other questions on the survey that talk about different situations related to this, but this is our one consistent question that we look at to gain some understanding about how parents feel or families feel that their child is safe at school. If you can look across from right to left, you can see a relatively consistent trend with strongly agree and agree. With a little bit of an uptick in those two top boxes, with 40% strongly agreeing in 2023 and 24, and 44% agreeing. So a nice trend to see that increasing over time. One thing to think about when we're answering some of these questions is it is an anonymous survey where we're not going in and identifying answers to various different groups to see, if this parent or this parent group or this type of parent has answered questions. And so when we look at the quantity of results and the information that's been provided to those in those survey results, we're feeling that we're having about 60% of our families, our unique families, engage in responding in the survey, because we do have some families that have more than one child. We do have some families that have only one child that's currently participating in the Madison system. So when we look at those unique families, we're feeling that we're around 60% of them engaging in the survey to give us that feedback, which is pretty nice. In talking with Hanover Research, who we partner with on a few different tools, they're saying a lot of schools target typically around 50% as a meaningful engagement for those family communities, and to see that we're above that, they were happy for us. And in general, most of our scores, when we look at these questions that we're looking at, tend to be over 80%, which they said is also above the threshold that they're typically used to seeing. So they were also pleasantly surprised by our ability to engage with our families in that way. When we look at this feeling that children are safe at the school and the perceptions of those families, we did see that it was slightly more positive at some of the lower grade levels for open enrollment families, and then for some families that had just one child attending the Madison system. When we go on to another question that we look at to see, you might say that you like it, but would you be willing to tell somebody else about it, which is a great way and fits into our marketing plan. We also see another strongly agree, almost at the 50% mark, which is a great number to have, and that's been relatively consistent over the course of time. We see that many of our families are eager to recommend the schools to somebody else who's looking for an educational opportunity similar to all the varieties that Madison does provide for us. We did see some trends for some more positivity at lower grade levels. Grade 1 families seem to really like us a little bit more than just about everybody else. So I don't know what we're doing in grade 1 quite yet, but I know they seem positive for us when responding to our surveys. When we look at overall, I'm satisfied with my child's academic progress. We do see some other top box scores of over 80% for strongly agree and agree. We did see a little bit of some dynamic responses when we get into fifth grade, where we see some inconsistencies maybe start to perk up a little bit. And as we know, in Madison, that's a bit of a transition from maybe getting to know one teacher or two teachers for your situation. Now you might have six teachers that you're interacting with. So we do know that there is some volatility that does happen slightly at fifth grade as students transition from that elementary experience to that middle experience. But in general, positivity was associated with English language arts academic progress, as well as their electives academic progress, and the variety of electives that students were able to engage in. It was that was a bright spot in a brighter spot in our middle school responses. And then when we look at this kind of overall score, how would you give that district letter grade? Typically, there's a high correlation between the district letter grade and the school letter grade. For this item, that we see that 66% of our families would rate us as an A, which is good to know. With those A's, what we did is we went in and say, even though you're giving us an A score, which is a really great result to have that many families who would attribute that good letter grade to us, are there any variabilities in there? And one thing we did see with some of those A families are some variabilities with some academic progress. They liked one aspect, but thought that maybe another aspect might need some improvement. So they gave us, a little glow and a little grow in those conversations as well, which is really nice because that's a really great interaction for us to see that we are doing some great things well, and there are some other things that we might want to move on. So they might have had like a very specific academic or extracurricular concern that they might have voiced, but overall they would rate things as an A. This indicator related to the following grade had a strong relationship with some performances of some individual teachers sometimes, or an individual adult that they interacted with. So they might mention that particular item as being highly influential when they gave an overall rating. And in general, high raters had a balanced perspective when we talked about giving some feedback as well as some other items of concern or maybe suggestions for improvement. When we looked at families who rated us as a B, which is about 22%, somewhere around 400 families, there were some moderate levels of satisfaction in certain areas, maybe suggesting some program expansion, some alternative ideas, or maybe changes to some academic workload that might potentially move them up. Typically, what we saw is sometimes with some A families, although many of them gave us high praise, there was some concerns about academic progress if they rated us an A. A big differentiator between an A and a B rating sometimes had to do with some safety concerns. And then a differentiator between a B and C oftentimes had to do with some safety concerns and then maybe some communication concerns with some particular adults that they're interacting with, maybe some inconsistencies or some items that they felt weren't addressed. So that was kind of the flow of things. As we saw, though, most parents were very favorable in their responses. But when our schools sit down to look at what's the difference between someone who's rating us a C or a B, they're able to say, we need to talk about our plans, our communication strategies. What do we want to communicate to parents in August and September and November and December, and what platforms are we using to communicate, so that it's very easy for them to find that information and they can fall back on these results to help drive those plans and give rationale to their team as to why we want to make those changes. When we look at some of those other families in the C, D, and F category, sometimes what they mentioned in their responses was maybe improved satisfaction related to targeted support for their students. That they felt maybe a particular need wasn't being met for those students, and so that's why they went with that rating for those particular scores. And so that kind of follows along with the model and one of our strategic initiatives related to MTSS, where we know that a large majority of our students, we want to find success, and then we have to apply some different tiers of support for those students. So related to those students, maybe we need to better communicate what those supports might be and how we gain access to those tiered supports for our Tier 2 and Tier 3 style students. And then when we move on, what we did towards the end of that survey is we released various different open comments. We went through those comments and tried to put them into a particular box. And so I've listed those particular boxes here. We had a total, a little over 400 comments on our survey. And if you remember, we had a little over 1,800 total responses. So about 400 of those 1,800 took time to write out some of those comments. One comment was "great job." And then another comment was about 700 words. So we had, various different variabilities in between. The "good job" comment would probably fall in a positive comment with very, and when we get into this conversation, not a ton of feedback on it, but in general, we would have cased that as a positive. The 700-word comment might have had some positives and some negatives and fallen into a few of these particular boxes here as we go through it. But when we looked at the negative comments in general, when we looked at the sentiment of those comments, about 77 of them were a little bit more on the negative side. And we see some related to teacher feedback, communication, school policies, curricular programs, general negativity about things with a lack of specificity on what that negative was, some student experience, workload time, where we start to get into a few, but notable mention comments related to negative sentiment. When we look at the positive themes, we had a significantly larger amount of comments that had a more positive sentiment, which is reflected in about 66% of the families rating us as an A. We had positive comments related to teacher-related feedback, school policies, communication, some of the same things that were inconsistent on the negative comments. And you can see some of those quantities of those family comments that we saw in those various different buckets. And then lastly, we had some neutral comments, maybe about 20, 22 of those comments related to various different items where it was hard to put them in one side or the other as far as where were they thinking, if it was at a negative or not. Sometimes maybe it's a question of like workload management, question mark, and you're like, I don't know if that's good or if that's bad. So we will put that in a neutral bucket. And so when we think about those different comments, I know the schools always love to get in the comment because that gets into some of the nitty gritty and you could really dive into what some of those things mean. But the schools also do look at all of the different questions that we do ask on the survey. We present to you some of the main priority ones, but we have some other ones that we pull in and out during the course of time throughout the years, maybe based on some responses from last year that we want to dig into some certain things differently. And the schools look into those things to see if there's any particular trends that they have that they want to address during their school improvement plans for the course of the year. So as I mentioned earlier at the beginning of our conversation, that first research and evaluation goes through and reviews those survey comments, and then we package it up as well as we can to the site administration to review so that they can have an idea about what the theme of those parent survey plan or family survey results are, so they can be prepared to go in and talk with their school integrated action plan teams to have those conversations where they come in and think about why those parents might be responding or those families might be responding in those ways. And then we actually just revisited the results again at the last instructional leadership team meeting. ALT, administrative leadership team meeting to revisit some of those results to see where they're at with their school improvement plans and bring those family survey comments back to the forefront to make sure that we're still thinking about those and thinking about what key items might need to be considered or further discussed with their teams. And so when the schools do come in a few weeks to present their school improvement plans, you may hear them allude to some of the family results relating to these different levels of monitoring. We're utilizing these different levels of monitoring to help them understand how well their primary need improvement plan is being integrated. And they're hoping, many of them are hoping to see some changes from the parent survey results when we're looking at level 4 for change or level 5 for impact. Maybe there are some safety programs or some academic programs or some behavior programs that they're implementing on the schools. Are those having some impact or change or something that's is having noticeable long-term impact on how families are responding on those surveys to make note of that. And so they'll be talking about how they've woven the family survey feedback into their school improvement plans going forward. Some of the other things to think about is that we have definitely unleashed a few different survey tools that we're thinking about. We have our partnership with Hanover that helps us with our MTSS survey that we administer to parents and staff to gauge their understanding of the MTSS process, because what we find is we have a very engaged family community in Madison, and when they receive information from us, oftentimes they want to know more information from that information. And so we're out there with the MTSS survey trying to identify our internal understanding of the MTSS process, which is one of our strategic initiatives, as well as the family understanding of the MTSS process, so that we can communicate some of those or maybe connect some of those bridges or barriers that we're experiencing. We have our end of the year parent survey, which we just talked about, and then we're also in the process of analyzing some results from our exit and retention staff survey from last year. So we have all these different tools to try and gather information. These different survey tools are related to our various different strategic initiatives and our strategic plan. In addition to that, we're working with various different departments on the MTSSB side of things to look at how these surveys can help meet our needs for our PBIS programs that we're engaged in, as well as all the different certifications related to PBIS and awards. So research and evaluation is working with student services to understand how we can meet their needs and our needs at the same time, because both organizations have different needs and different questions that they want to ask. So we're trying to marry that balance between them. In addition to doing that with the PBIS organizations that are out there, we're also working with Cognia, who we're engaged in with our advanced data accreditation process. They also have certain surveys and data pieces that they want to collect for their systems, and so we're trying to negotiate those items as well and bridge those gaps. So we're not giving out 3,000 surveys, we're still just giving out a few surveys to collect those informations that we need for our decision-making abilities. And with that, are there any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Pankowski. Start with Ms. Spear.
Thank you very much for this thorough report. I always look forward to the results of the parent survey. I think it is one of our key strategic initiatives in that we're able to truly hear directly from parents in an anonymous way on issues that obviously are of concern to them and us. Can you confirm for me that the verbatims, that the actual comments are going to be funneled to the principals? Did you say that? I'm sorry if you did and I missed that part.
Yes.
Okay, I may have been trying to read along. Thank you very much. I just wanted to make sure that that was actually happening. It always has, but I wanted to confirm it, especially if there's any parents watching who are like, hey, I had a comment and I wanted to get to where it was supposed to go. So thank you.
Yep. Thank you for that question. Whatever comment was submitted, many people read it.
Which is great. I think it's very important for our parents to feel heard.
Yes.
Ms. Kazi.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Piankowski. I think I can speak for the entire board when I say we really love to see the results of this report every year. It's a really important data point, and many different data points. I want to just throw in an encouragement to look at opening the survey instrument earlier than into May-Cember, because I will tell you as a parent and hearing from other parents, it's just May is insane. And where you have parents that have every intention of submitting a response, things happen and then the portal closes. So I just think we're going to see a higher involvement and maybe just happier responses. Mm-hmm. I think by May everyone is done, and I think sometimes that might reflect results. I mean, it's strange what can impact results, but sometimes when you're just done, it does impact how you respond. I was curious if we have any way to tease out responses from in-district and out-of-district parents at all.
Yes, I did neglect to do in general. Open enrollment, people who chose to identify themselves as open enrollment had a slightly more favorable
That would be what I
rating of
assumed,
us
yes.
relatively consistently throughout the system.
Okay, and that's what my question was, and that's what my assumption was. Yep. Also, for the safety question, the comments that you received for people that had some concerns, were there safety concerns more related to individuals, bullying, or were they related to the built environment of campus?
At elementary tended to be sometimes a little bit more about environment, and middle school tended, not exclusively, to be a little bit more about social interactions.
Okay, cool. And then finally, on some of the percentages, they didn't add up to 100. I assume it's because the question was skipped. Or we round it up or down?
I'm sorry, what was that?
So, for example, I don't know. I just always on the I would recommend my child's school to another. It's like the 23, 24 adds up to 98. So I was just curious
Yes.
if it was because we run it up, run it down, or just people didn't respond.
Rounding, yes.
Okay. I just wanted to better understand. Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
Mr. Holcomb.
Yes, thank you. And I think I agree that this is critically important. One thing that I thought might be useful or may not be, on slides 7 and 8, which are the comments where you talk about negative and positive. Mm-hmm. For me, I'm just visually seeing the comparison between the two, on one sort of slide, what the sort of the quantum of positive comments versus negative.
Okay.
I know that's not statistically accurate, but it is, I think, helpful to both see how that may be trending as well. So, just comparing that would be something that would be simple or helpful for a simple mind like mine. Okay. The other thing, I know we're going to be looking to trying to get more data in relation to how successful we're being on our specifics of our strategic plan. And I was wondering if you could maybe address now or put in consideration working the questions in the same areas, but really trying to tie them so that they could be utilized, the answers to the questions could be utilized as a data point for specific parts of our strategic plan, and maybe and trying to identify that. I think that would be helpful to us on several levels. But is that being done now? And is that something that we could potentially do, going into the future with the formulation of the questions?
Thank you for the question, Member Holcomb. We do pull out certain pieces of of that survey to address certain needs. Like, for instance, we do go through a part of the survey related to communication or related to MTSSA, which are aligned to our strategic initiatives. And typically, the way parents go through and answer those questions, depending on some of the selections they select in the beginning, it is chunked according to some broad strategic initiative topics, but we can definitely be more intentional about making those ties and communications when we're discussing the survey results with various different stakeholder members.
Yeah, I think if we, yes, it's down the hall.
Thank you. Thank you, Governing Board. Thank you, Mr. Pienkowski. Cabinet is working hand in hand with Mr. Pienkowski to take our key performance indicators and add more specificity to them so that they are, in fact, SMART goals. So you will see them provide more information on if we've met those goals or not. So that work is being done now within our 4 focus areas of the strategic plan.
Yeah, and I would like to, personally, this is something I've talked about a number of times. I'd like to see when we have these questions this way, also, even if they're general, but really tying this to our strategic plan. I mean, overtly. I mean, just saying, I think we need to be more, I think this is a good example of a place where we could be more direct with that tie-in in this. Because I think I want the strategic plan to be a living document, but also I think it's difficult at times to get data related to how we're doing on the strategic plan and some of this. This to me seems to be a place where it could be more directly related to that.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I just have a couple questions, and to piggyback off of that, I think it's also an outside data point that helps us validate the, whatever, however we think we're doing. It's nice to have that validated by parents or students that they recognize that as well. So agree with that. A couple of quick questions. The exit and retention surveys, are those relative to staff or to parents leaving the district?
The surveys that I alluded to in this presentation were related to staff.
Okay. It'd be, I know I've brought this up before, it would be really wonderful if we could develop some type of similar tool to ask parents who make a choice to leave the Madison district. I'm not talking about 8th graders matriculating on, but parents who've decided to leave the district or to maybe change schools. If we could get some feedback from them when, what precipitated the changes, you all can come up with the questions, but I think we could get some really interesting data from people who chose Madison and then have chosen something else. I think it could lead to some interesting information. So just some food for thought. The second comment I have is related to the open enrollment question. I know as a parent, when I filled it out and it said, "Are you open enrollment?" Well, my kids live in district, but we were choosing a school that is out of our area, and the question wasn't clear enough, I think, to make that clear to me as a parent. So just think about the wording of that. If it's outside of the district, open enrollment, or if you want to drill down a little further into, you're not attending your homeschool, but you're an in-district open enrollment family, that could be helpful. And then third, I know you have the statistics related to Spanish feedback, and I think one of our other items today is going to be relative to the families that we have who speak one of the other, I want to say it was like 20 different languages at the school. Presentation we had at the last meeting was about some software the district's going to be investing in that allows for Google Translate to use a multitude of other languages. Just wondering if you have on your radar any plans to perhaps lean into some of those others, so we could even get surveys out to some of the families who English or Spanish isn't their primary language.
Yep, that is definitely on our radar. One of the keys to that is I do know that we've procured various different tools to help with that barrier, but then also attempting to educate the end user on those tools to do so. So I have been exploring that. I have not taken any actions forward with that, but I do want to know a little bit more about some of the newer items that we have access to see if that can help us better reach all of our different stakeholder needs.
That's wonderful. I don't want to push it too quickly because translation is difficult. And when you're telling people to rank things on a scale, while culturally, 1 to 5 might be understandable to us, it might not be understandable to others. So making sure you have all of that clear and the communication clear, I think, is going to be important before diving in on that. So glad you're looking into that. No other questions for Mr. Pankowski? Thank you so much for the presentation today. We deeply appreciate it. Next item on the agenda is action items. Number 7.1, Dr. Guerin.
Vice President Thompson, members of the board, cabinet, and guests. Our 7.1 is a memorandum of understanding between Madison and the IRC, and I'd like to turn that over to Barb Marshall.
Thank you, Vice President Thompson, members of the board, and members of cabinet. Really excited to bring this proposal forward to the governing board. As you know, during the last school year, we received an influx of refugee students into the Madison neighborhood, mostly in the Rose Lane #1 neighborhood. And we're still gathering the numbers for this year, but we have about 50 students. And shared earlier in the year was that Laura Webb, our Director for Curriculum and Instruction, was able to secure a grant through the Arizona Department of Education that will fund a teacher for what Laura put together, she called a newcomer program. And although we received the funding notification in late July, Dr. Lomeli shared with me today that she's already working on the recommendation for hire for that position. So we're excited about that. And then in conjunction with that, Hillary O'Brien, our coordinator, our SEAL coordinator, partnered with the International Rescue Committee, and they have offered to provide some resources and supports for our refugee families. This includes professional development for our staff that is targeted specific to the needs of refugee students. And also to provide parenting classes for the families so that they can understand the American education system, which can be very different. Also, they would provide clothing and hygiene products for the families, as well as vaccination clinics. And a key component is that they would send volunteers that could help in our English learner programs to help support the teachers in those classes with the students. So we're really excited to bring forward this MOU and start with this partnership, and ask for your support with that.
Thank you, Ms. Marshall. I know this is usually an item that would appear on the consent agenda, but we pulled it off to ensure that we had a conversation about it because, learning about all of the refugee students we have in our community is so important. Are there any questions? Yes, Ms. Kazi.
I just have a comment. I just want to say I've worked with the International Rescue Committee, and they're an outstanding organization at both the national, the international, and the state level. They were a little decimated under the previous administration, but appear to have really built back up their professional staff. And I'm just thrilled because I think of any organization that we could be working with on this issue, they are the exemplar. So thank you for truly bringing to us, I think, an organization that's going to make a real difference for our students.
Any other questions? Just very briefly, I agree with all those comments Ozzy made. I also know that IRC takes various donations so they can give them back out to the community, and perhaps we can think about around the holidays, maybe having our schools partner with them for, in addition to the fundraisers we do with the food banks and others, but could directly benefit some of the folks in our own community. It could be interesting to do something on that front. Yes,
If
Mr.
I may,
Holcomb.
I mean, tying that into the meeting we just had with the PTOs, is that getting that information directly out to the PTOs would be good. I think also that could be something that could be dealt with in the interfaith breakfast that we have. That would be, I think, a particular good connection. In fact, I was just thinking myself, I'd love to have representative them, or even from the district, come to my Kiwanis Club and talk about it, because there's a lot of resources we could pull together. That would be something if I can help in that in any way, or we can help in any way, please do ask.
Ms. Spear.
I'm thrilled that to be able to vote yes on this MOU, and yes, I am going to vote yes. I broke a law or something by saying what I was going to vote. But I wanted to also throw this out there. I was able to work with some 8th graders a couple of years ago on their community service project, and they worked hand in glove with the IRC to support some middle school students that were being supported by the IRC. And I think that there's a natural fit with our IB community service projects at both the 4th grade and also the 8th grade.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I also know that for a while they took stuffed animal donations, and the stuffed animals that were exploding out of the drawers in my house made their way to other homes. So, yeah. Seeing no other comments, is there a motion to approve item number 7.1 as presented?
I will second.
Motion made by Ms. Kazi, seconded by Ms. Spear. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Item number 8, future meetings. Dr. Guerin.
Vice President Thompson, members of the board, cabinet, and guests, we are going to be keeping you busy in September. It is PSYOP season, and so we will start with our elementary schools on September 10th. We'll start a study session here at 2:15, and then move right into the board meeting. You will notice that there are more meetings with You Make a Difference Shining Stars this year, because we pulled apart district office with community ed and maintenance and transportation, since it was a lot of awards, keeping them all together. So you will notice that change. We will have some typical items. I'm still working on the Helios agreement, and I will have more information next week. I have a meeting on that next week. And then we also have our PSYOP session on September 24th, and that will be the middle schools and MTA.
Dr.
And-
Guerin, could you
Yes.
remind folks who are all the people who are listening online what PSYOP stands for?
Sure. It's our school integrated action plans. And our school integrated action plans really are an annual event where we do a deep dive into the data to look at school needs and set specific goals. Some of the goals are district-wide and some are site-specific. In other words, all the schools share some goals like MTSS. And then we work on those, and we set long-term outcomes and short-term outcomes based on really academic achievement, social emotional support, communication, all of the things. And again, it was very timely that we had our parent survey, because that is a piece of the puzzle that we derive our needs. And in Madison, the schools, and this is, I believe, a very unique thing that we do here, the schools present to the governing board. So you can hear results from last year, you can hear how they set their goals this year and what their plans are. And it provides governing board members a unique perspective into each school and how hard they're working to focus on student achievement and social emotional growth.
Thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
That was probably a little longer than you wanted, but you know, once I get on a roll. So we'll work on that. And then we do have another batch of policies that we just doled out in Cabinet today with much fanfare and excitement. So we will dive into, Ms. Marshall did not have all of them this time. So we were really pleased about that. Yes.
So I've been told on the Arizona School Board Association board that we're getting policies out in a more timely manner. I would love to hear any feedback like that. If you don't want to say that publicly, you certainly can include that in the report, but I would love some feedback. Thank you.
I think we would ask Ms. Humphries that, but I feel like we are getting them in a timely fashion.
I agree. We are not only getting them in a fashion, they're coming in a more efficient way. ASBA has, I think, in my opinion, been more easy to speak with about policies and easy to get a hold of to ask some questions regarding Policy Manager, the program that they use. And so I think since I've been here, this has been the best year for policies.
I am
That
thrilled to
may-
hear that. Thank you so
May or
much.
may not have something to do with you. I don't know.
So we will have quite the busy fall. And as you can tell, when the schools are this busy, we are this busy. So we are moving right along.
Okay, with that, yes, go ahead, Mr. Holcomb.
Yeah, and there are certain things I think, we've talked about before about having reports of different parts of the district, things that we don't always see. I'd really like to see us, and you and I've talked a little bit about this, in particular, again, somewhat going back to the strategic plan, laying out for the year times when we're going to have those things come up. We have policies in that now too. I'd like to see a plan for that. So we give the staff plenty of time to plan it out, but also so that we can cover those things. And I think, all board members, if there's something we want to see come in, put it in now and start seeing that so we see the whole year sort of laid out instead of for those things. I think that'd be useful.
Thank you, Board Member Holcomb. We've been talking about that in Cabinet. You can expect an update on the emergency response plan. You can expect an update for the Madison Center for the Arts. And we are pacing ourselves and filling those out. I think it was very well received in the spring when we brought some of those department updates and specific areas of focus like special education. The inclusion work is so important. I'm sure in the spring we're going to need to bring another update on that. So I appreciate those comments because it really does highlight the good work that we're doing.
Again, tying that also related to the strategic plan where we're at as well. Thank you.
Are there any other comments for future meetings from other board members? Hearing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I will second that.
Motion made by Mr. Holcomb, seconded by Ms. Spear. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously, meeting adjourned.
6:53.
What?